Okay, so in this video, we are going to learn how to stagger our animations. So what does that mean? What does mean staggering our animations? So here I have a simple animation that we're basically just going to move a box 300 pixels to the right. And I'm targeting the class of box. But here on this page, I have 1, 2, 3 items that have a class of box. So when I trigger this animation, what we'll see is that all 3 boxes will animate at the same time because I'm triggering that animation on everything that has the box class. But that doesn't necessarily look great, right? Maybe I don't want all 3 to animate at the same time. Maybe that does, and boom, we're done. But what if I wanted to stagger them? I wanted to animate them at the same time, but I wanted them to have more randomness. Now, inside of our animation timing settings, now I should note that these are primarily inside Drift Pro. Only the split text stack inside Drift supports stagger. You will need Drift Pro in order to stagger your other animations. Okay. So if we turn on stagger, essentially what this means is I can now stagger the start times. You define your time here. So here I have it set to 0.25 seconds. So a quarter second, the animation is going to then happen. If you notice now, they don't all animate at the same time any longer. They take a quarter second before they start. Now what's great is you can also choose where you want that stagger to go from. So if we do start going from the start, it's going to go 1, 2, 3. And if we do random, we could do random. We could do end, which in this case will be 3, 2, 1, right? So there's a lot of great intelligence here that allows us to define how not only that we can stagger, but how those staggerings are going to happen and how that timing is going to work, right? So really cool stuff there. Okay, so let's jump into a slightly more advanced situation here. Here I have an entire grid of squares. Okay, now this isn't necessarily something you would have. Maybe you have a grid of elements, maybe even some thumbnails. Okay, and we want to animate them in some fancy way, maybe on page load or as you scroll up into the page. This is amazing, right? Look at this, how this everything just kind of grows and animates, and we have this grid of things to animate from. So how do we do that? Now, I should note, if you're looking at this demo inside of the Drift Pro project file, there is a stack here that you probably don't own yet. It's called Particle Generator. It's going to be a part of Slot Machine 4, which will be our next stack release. It's coming soon. Essentially, what this does is this particular stack allows us to generate 72 of these boxes. Okay. So if you really want to play with this right now, just go ahead and copy and paste these multiple times. Okay. This particle generator, again, all it does is just take what we have here and creates a number of copies of them. So let's look at our animation though. So here I'm animating box, and obviously all of those 72 boxes have a class of box. And we don't want them to all animate at the same time, so we're staggering them. And the stagger is set to 0.1 seconds. And then we have the from center, and that's, if you notice, it animates from the center of the grid. And we also set to grid to auto. Okay, let's play with some of these settings. Let's go to start. We'll see that it always goes from the top left. And center, we already saw what center does. If we do random, that's more kind of interesting, where it kind of randomly chooses items from the grid to animate in. We can do edges, and that goes from the outside in, kind of the opposite of center, actually. And then we have end, which will go from the right to the left. Now, we can also do grid, right? So the default is auto. It'll kind of, default, it'll figure out how it wants to animate things. But we can also do like animate based on the x-axis. So it's going to animate everything up and then out, essentially. And then we can do the y-axis, which will basically be vertically, right? So a slightly different animation. Maybe you do start with that. That kind of gives us a different animation. So play around with these. There's a lot of really great, cool, staggering logic here. And what's mind-boggling is that it's all dynamically generated and figured out for us. So it's really cool. Drift does a really great job with this stagger stuff.